Okay, you're going, wait a minute, Dr. Imholt, where the heck is the 1916 Nobel Prize in Physics? There wasn't one. Europe was in the middle of World War One. The world was falling apart. Large numbers of people were dying every day in the war. I ran the numbers one time, and overall to the global population, that war decimated sort of 10% of the planet. It was a huge number of fatalities and families destroyed. And the Nobel Prize ceremonies are in the middle of that region of the world, so it made no sense to them to do that prize that year. So I wanted to take a moment and say, look, why am I doing this kind of stuff, right? Why am I going through all these older prizes and kind of doing these videos? Well, it's simple. There was a show when I was a kid called Connections that's still on. They made one season of it recently. It was late 70s, early 80s. There's been a couple of additional series of it hosted by James Burke. And what James would do was he would go through and say, hey, look, there's this invention over here that this caused this invention caused this invention, this invention caused this invention. And the next thing you know, we have automobiles or quantum computing or whatever it is. But he would tie it back across 200 years of innovation. And it was really an interesting show. I loved every one of those episodes. I've actually watched some of the late 70s ones, and it's 2024, and I watched them like this year. So they still are highly fun to watch and very educational. So one of the things that caused me to get into science was the questions that came out of shows like that. Like, how did they come up with that, right? What caused this innovation? And I wanted to understand more about the world around me. And that's what scientists do, is they always keep asking why. It's like when you get to the more modern theories or more modern Nobel Prizes, you're going to hear words like quantum and nano and all these things you've heard in science fiction, but we're going to make them real for you. Now, don't let any of those things scare you. I'm going to try to extract as much math as I can and just give you practical things. Occasionally, there might be some math that shows up just because it kind of makes sense to incorporate that in the story, but we'll make these things as painless as possible. But what I can tell you is that as we approach the more modern Nobel Prizes, some of those things are starting to impact your life today. And one of the ones if you really want to go off and try to figure out what's going to have the largest impact on the world around us. Believe it or not, it is quantum computing. It is one of those things that once you really dig into what it does or what it can do, it's really going to change the world as much as the internet did. And you can decry the internet all you want, but this is how we're talking to each other. It's how you're seeing these shows. And it did change a lot of things. So it changed the access to information, and that change in access to information allows us to make these innovations even faster. Because if you think about it for a minute, throughout all of human history, there were a couple of events that really started to speed up innovation. One of those was the printing press, and one of those was instead of a manual printing press, now we've got an electronic printing press. Now it's like, okay, let's advance it again and make things move quicker. Well, now you can electronically send all the data from New York to Los Angeles so that they can print the New York Times out there and the news doesn't have to just stay in one place. It can bounce around quickly. Well, now you don't even have to print it and deliver it to your house. You can get it straight to your computer screen. So these things all made a huge difference in the transfer of information. And getting information faster increases the speed of innovation. And having access to more computer power increases that speed of innovation even more. Um, that might be a good thing, that might be a bad thing. Only time will tell, but it will be a thing. One of the other things that's really going to make a huge difference in the lives of many, many people, oddly enough, is 3D printing. You may think of it as like a hobbyist thing now, but where was it 10 years ago? It was off in labs and maybe it existed, maybe it didn't. Well, now we're getting down to where we can make smaller and smaller things and more refined things. You can 3D print a house if you want to. With just robots, you can 3D print all manner of things. And when they 3D print things smaller and smaller and smaller, you can get closer and closer to 3D printing food if you'd like. Uh, so, Star Trek little things where they create, where Captain Picard says Earl Grey hot. That's actually getting closer to reality. So as we get to these closer prizes, some of what we're going to see may look like science fiction, but I can tell you everything I'm telling you is science fact. If I say, hey, look, I think this goes, some of the prizes we've done so far, I've said, okay, this was the prize and this is what it's gotten us, right? So we can put in the world of, hey, this prize from 1912 yielded this thing over here that you've actually used and seen and touched. Some of the more modern prizes, maybe it's still in the science labs, but I will do my best to convey, hey, look, this is still in the lab, and I think this is where it's going to affect your life. So I will make sure I flag those. This is going to be a fun journey to take together. Thank you for sticking with me this long. We will continue the other ones. And after we finish the physics Nobel Prizes, we're going to do chemistry. There's a few others to go through. And once the physics prizes are done, I will go back and do the other disciplines, but we're also going to start digging into modern physics and quantum computing and all those things in videos that are outside of the physics Nobel Prize world. Uh, in my career, I've been lucky enough to meet more than 10 Nobel laureates. I think it's 13 now. Might be 14. Um, so I will do my best to bring some of those guys on when we talk about their prize. And maybe they can talk to us about what the practical applications are. So look forward to that in the more modern ones, but we've got a long journey to go and we're just getting up to the cool stuff. One of the things that if you really want to know a little bit more about what's coming up, um, Google and look up Richard Feynman. There's plenty of room at the bottom. Professor Feynman did a fantastic job of explaining a long time ago kind of where things are going to go in the future. And he was just dead on the money. That's one of the most famous physics talks I've ever seen. So take a look at that one if you want. We're going to dig into 1917 next, and stick around. Plenty more to come.